I'm joined now by Jesse Weber from the Law and Crime Network to discuss this situation with Luigi Mangione shooting the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. I've been a big fan of your work, and you gave me the call, and I really appreciate it. In full honesty, there has been so many legal stories. You have reached out, and I feel bad I've been so busy, but I'm glad I had an opportunity to come on now and talk to you.
Of course. Perhaps I'll just start out. A lot of people who watch my show are Canadian. They don't necessarily understand what is so unique about this particular story. Obviously, it's unique because of the nature of who got killed in the situation, but particularly, like, there was a poll recently that showed that 41% of young people found the shooting of Brian Thompson justified. Like, what is behind this that is making people have so many conspiracies?
Okay, so there's a lot to break down here. First of all, I'm from New York. Where Brian Thompson got killed, I pass by every week, okay? You don't see murders like that ever, okay? Unless we're talking about the days of the mafia. This is Midtown Manhattan. It was early in the morning. This was right when, the hustle and bustle of the day. To see somebody assassinated, shot point blank range with a silencer like that is insane. From a legal point of view, I cover these kind of cases all the time. You're leaving a trail of evidence. There's surveillance cameras all over the place. I mean, the idea that he actually was able to make it on the run, for, assuming it's him, made it on the run for so many days is pretty incredible. So put that to the side. The reason you're seeing this outpouring of support for him, I think, is a few reasons. Number one, there is, and I think this is justified in the sense people are angry about the healthcare industry in this country. They're very upset with the fact of being denied claims, and United Healthcare is one of the biggest in the industry. And they look at this as, taking it to the man, taking it to corporate America. It's insane. It's insane because you can never have murder justify as a disagreement that you have about corporate policy or congressional policy. Because where does it end? It doesn't end with health insurance. If you have problems with your politicians, they create a policy, they pass a law that affects your life and creates a hardship for yourself. So what, you're just going to kill the head of a politician, you're going to kill the head of a media company because you think that they're producing content that's harmful to this country? That's how terrorism wins. And we could talk about the fact that these are terrorist charged, but I think it's a really dangerous thing and a dangerous way to move forward. And, the fact that it was so brazen. And by the way, if you look at Brian Thompson and you look a little bit more about him, he wasn't one of the bad guys. Sure, he worked for United Healthcare, and we can have a whole discussion about the problems of the health insurance in this industry, in this country, and how it has ruined people's lives. I'll be fair to say that. But Brian Thompson, before his death, was actually trying to change the narrative a little bit and trying to explain to people what the healthcare industry is about and what United is about. And there was a misunderstanding about that. And plus, put it aside, he's a human being. He was a father, he was a husband, he was a son, he was a brother. And I think that is lost sight. So people see it in that way, but also, let's call it what it is. Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, good-looking guy, fit. People are attracted to that, and they see him as a sense of a martyr. They see him as a folk hero in a way. And it's incredibly disturbing what you're seeing, particularly on social media. I think it's disturbing that his legal defense fund has now been raised over, $130,000. And, I know they say on that fund that it's not about justifying murder, but again, it is a bit disturbing to see this. And that's coming from an attorney. Look, he'll have his day in court. He's innocent until proven guilty. He has a right to a legal defense. But to see people justifying the killing here or saying, yeah, it's terrible, but there really is no but. And it's very alarming. It was so alarming, I'll tell you why. I thought, I wasn't even sure he'd actually be indicted. It's very easy in the law to indict somebody. It's very low standard. And the evidence was there. But I thought such an outpouring of support for him, maybe they wouldn't even indict him. And I think it goes to a separate question. If this goes to a trial, both at a state or federal level, can you actually convict him, or will people feel a sense of sympathy for him?
So perhaps, like, going to, for example, Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, where we are now, he actually met Luigi Mangione as he was coming back to New York. Of course, that just happened recently. And then I was listening to, like, his explanation as to why he did that, and it seemed like kind of a little bit strange to me anyways myself. But does that perhaps speak to the fact that even people in elected office right now are skeptical of the situation, or just, I guess, just like people are still kind of reading in between the lines or trying to make something a story that isn't really a story?
Well, putting to the side the fact that he's a politician who doesn't want to get in front of the camera for a few times for a good photo op,
Yeah.
this was a really heinous crime. And I think when you're seeing the public's reaction to it, I can't fault Adams for necessarily doing that. Because I think what you're seeing, it was a shock to me. It's been a shock to a lot of people that you're seeing the support for what he did. And, you know, some would say from a legal point of view, he has been aggressively charged. Terrorism charges, now being hit with federal charges. We can talk about the legal significance of that. But they're trying to make a point. They're trying to deter this kind of behavior. They don't want copycats. And there has been online chatter about copycats, which again is really scary. But to commit such a brazen crime in New York City against the CEO of a health insurance company, and it's somehow being okay or being justified, he's standing there and making a point that this is not acceptable. We will not tolerate it. This was a crime that happened in my city, and I can't necessarily blame him for doing that, for wanting to escort Mangione. Now, there's been a lot of people who say, well, my gosh, why did he have like 50 armed personnel walking him around? He looked like the Joker in a Batman movie, right? The truth was, and I think there was an analyst on CNN who said this, and it really got me thinking, it wasn't necessarily that someone was going to attack Mangione. It was the idea is, would somebody help him escape? You know, there's videos I saw on social media of people watching him being escorted from that helicopter who are like, hey, Luigi, like, it's great that, you know, go Luigi. Is it outside the realm of possibility that someone would want to intervene and try to get him to escape? It's a really crazy situation. So I can't blame the mayor for wanting to have a part in this and symbolically escort him down to the federal courthouse.
And let's talk about what actually comes next, because he retained a pretty popular attorney, a former CNN analyst who now is being praised by a lot of people for the work that she's done previously. And so that could perhaps help kind of strengthen his side of the case. But what is he facing in terms of charges and just what comes next?
Okay, so first of all, I'll talk about her, Karen Friedman Agnifilo. Great option because she had worked in the Manhattan DA's office, which is the office that's prosecuting him on the state charges. So to have somebody with that level of experience is great. So he's now being charged in, well, he's 3 different jurisdictions. Pennsylvania, which I think you can put at the bottom end because, look, he is facing weapons charges there and forgery charges, but those were placeholder charges. Once he was ultimately arrested, you need something to detain him. Put that to the side. Really, we have to talk about New York. So the New York case, he was actually indicted. So this case will move forward through the different stages. I think what's significant about the state charges, we all knew he was going to be charged with second-degree murder. In New York, it's different than in other states. New York, it's just intentional killing. It's just an intentional killing. It fits that category. I think that would be relatively easy to prove when you look at the surveillance footage, the ballistics, the fingerprints. There's going to be a lot more. We haven't even talked about what they will or won't find on his cell phone. But he was charged with first-degree murder in New York. We didn't all anticipate that because in New York law, it's very different. You know, if I said to you, I don't know how familiar you are with our criminal justice system, but first-degree murder, most people would say, oh, that's premeditated, intentional murder. True, in a lot of states it is. But here in New York, that's not first-degree murder. First-degree murder is only for specific categories. And really, you're talking about, for example, killing a police officer, committing a murder in a prison. But there are terrorism charges. So if you commit a murder in furtherance of terrorism, whether it's to alter public policy or instill fear in the population. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's the way you get to first degree. I'm not necessarily sure what he did would fit in that category. I think his writings or his alleged writings from his manifesto and notebook would help to prove that's what his goal was. And I think that could ultimately help. And remember, they want first degree because that's automatically life in prison. Second-degree murder, which again I think is the easier charge to ultimately convict him of, is 25 years to life. So they're trying to get him as high as possible. Then he's hit with federal charges, which in a way almost came out of nowhere. And the federal charges are really interesting because he's hit with, right now, to be clear, he hasn't been indicted yet on the federal charges. He has to be. In order for this case to progress, he has to be indicted. I think based on what we saw in New York, I think he'll ultimately be indicted on the federal charges. The federal charges are a little different. So he's facing 2 stalking charges, which are interesting because on certain points when you look at his writings where it seemed like this was planned and he was targeting Brian Thompson and targeting United Healthcare and was planning on doing this outside of the investors conference at the Hilton Hotel, you could say he's been doing this for a while. He was stalking him, he was tracking him, he had the intent to kill him. But there's a specific, I was talking to an analyst yesterday about this on my show Sidebar. An analyst said if you look at the stalking charges, there's an element of it where you had to place Brian Thompson in fear of his life. Did he even know that he was being surveilled? And that, I don't know if the stalking charges will work. Why is that important? Because he's also charged federally a federal murder charge. And that federal murder charge is committing a murder while stalking. And if the stalking doesn't work, then the murder doesn't work. And so it makes me wonder, would these federal charges fall to the wayside? I will say the reason they're going federally is, again, to prove a point. As a form of deterrence, this will not be tolerated. But also, it carries the death penalty. Potentially, that murder charge carries the death penalty. Now, there was a talk about these cases would run parallel to one another. I don't know exactly what that means. Usually, the feds would come first, and then the state cases. We'll see. He can't go to trial at the same time, federally and state. And it's also a little bit different theories of the case, but we'll see which way it progresses.
And what do you make of like the fact that a lot of the news recently, whether it be the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, multiple assassination attempts on Donald Trump, this incident here that we're referencing, and then a number of other examples as well, it seems as if people are going about new ways to express what traditionally would be described as political frustration, and obviously taking it to the next extreme here. But it seems as if like some of these polls are suggesting that the general public is almost okay with it. I mean, how do you kind of overcome that, but more specifically, how can that kind of influence, the result of a case, if at all?
Well, look, this is not the first time we've seen public political assassinations or attempted assassinations. But social media sure doesn't help. People live in an echo chamber. And if a certain thought materializes, it can metastasize. And you have people who all of a sudden will start jumping in on that and fueling that and fueling that. And that's how something becomes viral. Of the fact that a video in a club in Boston, there was a dance party and they put up Luigi Mangione's face and everybody started cheering. And that clip's put on TikTok and there's 1.2 million likes. Young people in general, they'll just jump on any bandwagon, no matter what it is, to be a part of something. That's always there. But I think that this country has become incredibly divided. It has become incredibly polarized. And sometimes it seems, unfortunately, that you are resorting to violence and the acceptance of violence because there's this built-up hatred for the other side, that it's okay. And I will tell you, when there was the first attempted assassination of Donald Trump, it was an incredibly difficult day for us in this country. It was disturbing. And I have to really, credit the people on the other end of the aisle, those on the left, who do not agree with Donald Trump ever, who said, I'm wishing him the best, I'm reaching out to him, I'm wishing all the best for his family. That was a time that you need to come together. And obviously there were certain people online who said some horrific things, who kind of egged it on and said, I wish he didn't miss. That's really sick stuff. And you're going to have terrible, sick people in this country no matter what. It's in every country. You just hope that those voices are more the minority than the majority.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll continue to follow. It's very interesting.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.